Living with wild animals is not as easy or as charming as it seems, but watching them can be really fun. But that is not the case with Tansy Aspinall. She grew up alongside gorillas, and when she saw them again after many years, something amazing transpired. Continue watching to find out how their reunion went. Tansy Aspinall had quite an unusual childhood. Usually, children grew up with pets such as dogs, cats, or birds. But for Tansy, there was a different way of living. Thanks to her father, Damien Aspinall, who was the owner of Howlett's Wild Animal Park, located in Canterbury, UK, and the Aspinall Foundation Aspinall, she got to hang out with gorillas from a very young age. He even got in trouble with social services for allowing her to stay close with the gorillas and play with them. The goal of a father's foundation was to rehabilitate captured gorillas and eventually release them into their natural habitat in Western Africa. He helped the gorillas to live a better life after returning to the wild. However, he had a controversial way to do so. His philosophy was to encourage the workers to come into close contact with the potentially dangerous animals. And even though they have had mainly good interactions with the animals, there have been a few situations that have ended fatally. Not a gorilla, but 2 tigers of the foundation killed 2 keepers in 1980, and 4 years later, a keeper was crushed to death by an Indian bull elephant. In 1996, the Aspinall Foundation won a high court case to continue the controversial practice of keepers having a close contact with the dangerous animals. The Aspinall Foundation helped 80 gorillas get back to the wild, but the 2 gorillas that had a more special bond with Tansy were named Brims and John, and they were part of a family of gorillas that were released all at once into their natural habitat. Tansy recalls how she used to play with the gorillas. They used to come up to her and hug her, and they would run and roll around together. Tansy and her sister Claire used to play with the Dala and Brims on the lawn, and they sometimes went into the cages with the other gorillas. She loved being around them all, but these 2 were really special to her and her sister. They were like family. Tansy last saw the gorillas when she was 10, and they were being created up for the trip to the conservation site in Gabon. 12 years after Tansy and her father Damien moved away from Gabon, they returned to the Congo to search for their friends. They traveled down a river on a boat which takes them to the area of the country where they'd been told gorillas live. Damien attempted to call their favorite pair with a special call. The reunion of Aspinall and the gorillas is very heart-touching. She was raised with them and now meets them again after 12 years, and their reactions are heart. The 22-year-old didn't expect anything to happen when she started the journey to visit them. It had been a long time, and she wasn't sure if her 2 old friends would even remember her, let alone act so lovingly towards her. Deep inside, Tansy knew that everything would go all right though. Just when they thought that they would not show up because they might have forgotten their English start, the gorillas were seen on the bank of the river once Tansy's father had disembarked and headed to shore. Not only were they there, but it was clear that these gorillas absolutely remembered their old friends. Damien greeted them first and made sure it was safe before Tansy got close. He would never have let her near an overly aggressive gorilla. It is not so hard to understand they responded to Damien's calls, but what was more interesting is that Tansy was just a little child the last time they saw her, and they acted totally lovely towards her. They even treated her with more care than Damien, and according to Damien, this was because they saw that she was a woman. Djala and Brims hugged her and even started expressing their feelings vocally. That's how excited they were to meet her. Tansy recalls the gentle looks on their faces and how safe and reassured she felt when she met them. Tansy said in an interview that this had been the best trip of her life, and it was incredibly moving for Damien too. It was a wonderful and very emotional thing for them to see how these animals walk in freedom now, knowing that they were the ones that gave them this opportunity. Djala was the male leader of the troop and had been rescued 30 years ago, just as he was about to be slaughtered and eaten by poachers. He used to be so nervous in captivity, but he seemed very calm when they reunited. When it was time for Tansy and her father to leave that day, you can almost see the gorillas begging for her not to go away, and this was the hardest part of their reunion, saying goodbye again. They couldn't stay with them forever though, even if they wanted to. After staying with them for a few days, it was time to leave, and Tansy had a strange feeling that this would really be the last time she would see them, and her gut feeling didn't lie her. Something very terrible happened to Djala and Brims and also their family. It is quite risky to release so many gorillas all at once, but nobody can predict what would happen to them after they were released. even though they were rehabilitated and taught how to act in the wild.
Also, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these animal stories every day. Now, back to the story.
There's always something that can go wrong. They could catch a disease, eat poisonous fruits, or die on their own. Tansy's gut feeling was right. A few months after Tansy and her father's visit to the conservation site in Gabon, 2 gorillas went missing. They were both heartbroken by this news. Damien's team couldn't find them for days, but when they found them, their bodies were already decomposing. There were no signs of bites or wounds, so this eliminated the possibility that Leopard had killed them, but they had extensive trauma on their skulls and torsos. And from this, it seemed that they had been brutally battered to death or swung by the limbs and with enormous force against the trunk of tree, the hallmarks of a ferocious attack by another huge gorilla. After this mishap, more gorillas from the same family group were found dead and some others went missing. The victims were Djala's 5 wives, Tanki, Chishi, Mumba, Kibi, and Fufu, and a baby female named Aku, one of his 4 children. Now, they knew a killer gorilla was the cause of all their deaths, but who was it exactly? There were a lot of thoughts about someone wanting to sabotage the conservation project, but Tansy and her father were the only ones that realized the truth. The killer gorilla was a silverback gorilla named Bo Manga. Bo Manga was also part of the project. He was taken 14 years ago when he was an infant and cared for in Africa before being released into the wild shortly afterwards. Before killing the females, Bo Manga had fought Djala, the male leader of the troop. Djala was bruised and swollen, probably because he had attempted to defend his wives. He had to be treated with anti-inflammatory drugs. Damien didn't see the attacks coming, but later some circumferential evidence against Bo Manga appeared. First, Bo Manga nested close to the river bank, just across from the island where the killing spree had occurred, and lived a solitary life. Bo Manga had no mates nor offspring. This was highly unusual given that neighboring males usually divide the females among themselves and seldom live without mates. The Aspinall team said that they were aware of this well before the attacks, but they have never thought this might pose a threat. They assumed that Bo Manga was a harmless gorilla that just couldn't attract females, but Bo Manga's issue is deeper than superficial. Gorillas are habitually placid and good-natured, and it was unheard of for males to kill adult females. But Bo Manga's traumatic past has led to these events. He was beaten as a child, and all this has made Bo Manga psychotic, and this mental damage made it go after other gorillas. This pathological serial killer was an absolute shock for Damien. He had spent most of his life among the gorillas and had never seen something like this before. He had foreseen that the gorillas could die in the wild because of natural causes or a disease, but Damien and his team have never thought that another gorilla could kill its own kind. Although, it was sure that Bo Manga killed the first 2 females with trauma wounds. The team wasn't sure if the other gorillas were murdered by Bo Manga too. Damien said that it might be possible that they have died in another way. Damien has been criticized for his quest to close all zoos and release all animals back to the wild. 60 Minutes aired a story profiling him. The correspondent Leslie Stahl posed the question of whether or not endangered animals born and bred in captivity can be released into the wild. In this story, Tara Dansky, the president of the Dian Foss Gorilla Fund, cautioned that humans have a very romantic notion of what the wild's like and that the wild is not a place where it is safe and animals get to roam free and make choices. She added that animals have to find food, they have to avoid predators, and have to find mates. In addition to these ecological threats, some humans pose a threat to animals. Hunting and habitat loss are just 2 of the many things that humans do that may harm or kill an animal. The human imagination paints an idyllic view in their minds. The wild is a safe place for animals. Djala, Bo Manga, Djogo, and Luna were the only ones that survived from the family of 10 gorillas that were released to the wild at the same time. They remain in the vast wild reserve run by the Aspinall Foundation in Gabon. Luckily, no more gorillas were killed. However, even though Damain told the news that Bo Manga was the killer, Dr. Martha Robbins, who has studied gorillas for 25 years, suggested that the gorillas could have died of other causes. She also revealed her theory that Djala might have killed them himself because they were about to leave him for Bo Manga. No more investigation was done for this case, but in Martha Robbins' words, If the accused gorilla was charged in a court of law, the case wouldn't hold up. What are your thoughts on this story? Are there any wild animals you could see yourself spending your life with? Share in the comments below which one you prefer. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. It'll help us make more for you. You can even set notifications so you always know when we post something new. Thank you.